January 7, 1945. General Major Kurt von Tippelskirch sat in his command bunker near Trier, reviewing intelligence summaries that made no tactical sense. Third Army had been operational for 156 consecutive days. His staff had documented 47 major engagements where American forces faced encirclement, superior numbers, or devastating counterattacks. Standard doctrine predicted withdrawal. When forces encountered overwhelming opposition, commanders pulled back, reorganized, and attacked from better positions. Every army did this. The Soviets, the British, even other American armies. Third Army never had, not once. Not in Normandy when surrounded at Avranches, not in Lorraine when fuel ran out, not at Metz when casualties mounted. They not even during the Ardennes, when German panzers shattered the American line and Third Army pivoted north into the enemy's main strength. Von Tippelskirch had commanded against Soviet forces for 3 years. He understood that retreat wasn't weakness. It was tactical flexibility. Elastic defense required giving ground to preserve forces. Every competent commander withdrew when circumstances demanded, but the intelligence logs were unambiguous. In 156 days of continuous combat, Third Army had advanced 8,427 kilometers, retreated 0 kilometers. The question wasn't whether Patton's doctrine was reckless. The question was why it kept working. Wehrmacht defensive doctrine had evolved through years of fighting on multiple fronts. The principle was mathematically sound. When enemy attacks succeed, defending forces withdraw to prepared secondary positions, forcing attackers to extend supply lines and expose flanks. Time bought through elastic defense allowed counterattacks against overextended enemies. This doctrine had worked against Soviet armies in 1941 and 1942, against British forces in North Africa, against American forces in Italy. Attackers who pushed too far, too fast, became vulnerable. Defenders who withdrew intelligently survived to fight from advantage. General Oberst Johannes Blaskowitz, commanding Army Group G facing Third Army, had built his defensive strategy around this proven principle. His forces held primary defensive lines. When Americans broke through, German units withdrew to secondary positions. American supply lines stretched. German counterattacks hit exposed flanks. The strategy had worked perfectly against First Army in the Hurtgen Forest, against Seventh Army in Alsace, against British forces across the Rhine approaches. It failed completely against Third Army. Blaskowitz's intelligence staff documented the pattern starting in August 1944. When Third Army broke German defensive positions, American units didn't pause to consolidate. They attacked forward into the next defensive line before German forces completed withdrawal. When German counterattacks hit Third Army flanks, American units didn't withdraw. They pivoted, engaged the counterattack, and maintained forward pressure simultaneously. The Wehrmacht was fighting an army that refused to give back any ground it had taken, ever. And that inflexibility was somehow creating operational advantages instead of disasters. The tactical problem emerged clearly by October 1944. German counterattacks were failing not because they lacked strength, but because they couldn't force American withdrawals. Doctrine was precise about counterattack objectives: hit enemy flanks, create tactical crisis, force enemy commander to choose, withdraw or accept encirclement. Competent commanders withdrew. Stubborn commanders got encircled and destroyed. Third Army commanders never withdrew. On October 3, 1944, General Major Erich Abraham commanded 89th Corps defending south of Metz. His intelligence staff identified a Third Army penetration. Elements of 5th Infantry Division had pushed 6 kilometers into German lines, creating a salient German artillery could interdict from 3 sides. Abraham ordered immediate counterattacks from north and south. Standard doctrine. The American salient was tactically untenable. When German forces closed the salient's base, the American commander would withdraw or lose the entire penetrating force. The American commander, Colonel Andrew Goodpaster, didn't withdraw. Instead, he committed his reserve battalion forward, deepening the penetration while German counterattacks closed behind him. By October 4th, Goodpaster's regiment was technically encircled, supplied only by aircraft, facing German forces from 3 directions. Wehrmacht doctrine said the Americans were finished, cut off, no withdrawal route, surrender or destruction inevitable. On October 5th, 3rd Army's 7th Armored Division attacked the German counterattack forces from the west. Goodpaster's encircled regiment attacked east simultaneously. The German counterattack units, but caught between 2 American forces, withdrew. The salient held. The encirclement failed. The Americans never retreated. Abraham's after-action report was blunt. Enemy commander demonstrated tactical inflexibility bordering on recklessness. However, this inflexibility prevented us from forcing withdrawal, and enemy reinforcements exploited our commitment to the counterattack. The Germans were discovering that an army that never retreated was impossible to defeat using doctrine built on forcing retreats. After the war, the mechanism behind Third Army's no-retreat policy emerged through testimony and captured documents. What German intelligence perceived as tactical stubbornness was calculated strategic doctrine, personally enforced by Patton through methods that shocked Wehrmacht officers when they learned the details. Colonel Paul Harkins, 3rd Army Deputy Chief of Staff, documented Patton's explicit orders in post-war interviews. The directive was distributed to every unit down to battalion level on August 1, 1944, the day 3rd Army became operational. The order was titled Offensive Spirit and contained 3 paragraphs. The first, "This army does not surrender ground it has taken, ever." The second, "Commanders who order withdrawals will be immediately relieved, regardless of tactical circumstances." The third, "When enemy counterattacks, attack back harder." Harkins described the policy's enforcement. It wasn't suggestion. Patton relieved 4 battalion commanders in the first month for ordering tactical withdrawals. The message went through 3rd Army like a shockwave. No retreat meant no retreat. The policy created situations that violated every principle of tactical common sense. On September 27, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams commanded a tank battalion near Aracourt when his unit was hit by German counterattack from 11th Panzer Division. Standard doctrine: withdraw, reorganize, counterattack from prepared positions. Abrams' orders from Patton: attack into the counterattack. Abrams' after-action report describes what happened. "We were outnumbered approximately 2 to 1 in armor. Conventional doctrine said withdraw. General Patton's orders said attack. We attacked." Abrams' battalion destroyed 15 German tanks while losing 7. The German counterattack broke apart, not because it was defeated, but because it encountered American forces attacking when they should have been withdrawing. But what they found would change everything about how German commanders planned defensive operations. The captured document came from 3rd Army's 4th Armored Division, recovered by Wehrmacht intelligence in November 1944. It was a tactical memorandum explaining Patton's reasoning behind the no-retreat policy. The memorandum's core argument was mathematical. Every meter of ground surrendered must be retaken. Retaking ground costs more casualties than holding ground. Therefore, holding ground is always cheaper than withdrawing and retaking, regardless of tactical circumstances at withdrawal moment. Oberst Friedrich Wilhelm von Mellenthin, Chief of Staff to multiple Panzer armies, studied the memorandum after its capture. His analysis, written in December 1944, identified the strategic implications German commanders had missed. Von Mellenthin wrote, "American no-retreat doctrine violates tactical flexibility principles. However, it creates operational advantages we cannot counter. When our forces counterattack American positions, we expect enemy withdrawal, consolidation, and renewed attack from better positions. This gives us time to establish defensive positions along new lines. Third Army's refusal to withdraw denies us this time. They hold ground regardless of cost, and their reinforcements attack while we are still executing our counterattack." The memo continued. More critically, American soldiers have internalized this doctrine. When encircled or attacked from flanks, they do not consider withdrawal as option. This creates defensive stubbornness our forces cannot break without disproportionate casualties. Von Mellenthin's analysis identified what German tactical doctrine couldn't accommodate: an enemy that treated every piece of ground as non-negotiable made planning impossible. Wehrmacht defensive strategy relied on trading space for time. Third Army refused the trade. The statistical validation was devastating. German intelligence documented 73 instances between August 1944 and January 1945 where Third Army units faced situations German doctrine classified as withdrawal required. In every instance, American commanders refused to withdraw. The outcome ratio: 68 instances resulted in Third Army maintaining or advancing positions. 5 instances resulted in American units being encircled and requiring relief. But even those 5 encircled units never withdrew. They held positions until relieved by other Third Army forces. The casualty mathematics challenged assumptions. German planners calculated that inflexible defense should produce catastrophic losses. Third Army casualties were actually lower than First Army, which followed conventional flexible defense doctrine. The reason, von Mellenthin eventually concluded, was operational tempo. Third Army's refusal to surrender ground maintained constant offensive pressure. German forces never had respite to reorganize, never had time to establish optimal defensive positions, never could execute the elastic defense that required temporary withdrawal to work. Patton had weaponized inflexibility, and Wehrmacht doctrine had no counter. December 1944, the Ardennes offensive. This was where German intelligence expected Third Army's no-retreat doctrine to finally collapse. When Wehrmacht forces shattered American lines in the Ardennes, General Oberst Alfred Jodel's plan specifically targeted Third Army's inflexibility. The offensive would drive west, forcing Patton to either withdraw forces from his Saar offensive or watch German panzers reach the Meuse River. Every tactical calculation said Patton had to retreat. Third Army was engaged in active offensive operations around Saarbrücken, 100 kilometers south of the Ardennes breakthrough. To counter the German offensive, Patton would need to disengage, withdraw forces from contact, reorganize, and redeploy north. Standard procedure. Necessary procedure. The only way to respond to operational crisis. At the Verdun meeting on December 19th, Eisenhower asked Patton how quickly Third Army could disengage from the Saar and counterattack toward Bastogne. Patton's response is documented in multiple sources. December 22nd, 3 divisions, and we're not disengaging. The German intelligence assessment prepared by General Major Hans von Obstfelder calculated this was impossible. Third Army couldn't maintain offensive pressure in the Saar while simultaneously launching major attacks north. The logistics alone, fuel, ammunition, command coordination, required choosing one objective or the other. Von Obstfelder's prediction: Third Army would withdraw from the Saar, redeploy north and attack toward Bastogne starting December 26th or 27th. This gave German forces holding Bastogne 7 to 8 days to force American surrender before relief arrived. On December 20th, a Third Army continued attacking in the Saar. Same units, same intensity, no withdrawal. On December 21st, Third Army continued attacking in the Saar while simultaneously moving 3 divisions north. On December 22nd, Third Army continued attacking in the Saar while launching attacks toward Bastogne with 4th Armored Division, 26th Infantry Division, and 81st Infantry Division. Von Obstfelder's intelligence staff couldn't reconcile the situation. The Americans were maintaining active offensive operations in 2 directions simultaneously, 100 kilometers apart, without withdrawing from either. The logistical requirements violated basic planning principles, but it was happening. General Major Heinz Kokott, defending Bastogne, watched American armor approach from the south on December 23rd, the one day after von Obstfelder predicted they couldn't possibly arrive. His defensive plan assumed German forces would face hastily assembled American relief forces scraped together from withdrawn units. Instead, Kokott faced 4th Armored Division at full strength, supported by coordinated artillery, attacking with the operational tempo of forces that had been preparing for days, not hours. On December 26th, 4th Armored Division broke through to Bastogne. Third Army never withdrew a single unit from the Saar. The offensive there continued through December and into January. The Ardennes counteroffensive failed for multiple reasons, but one factor consistently appeared in German after-action reports. Third Army responded faster than planned because it never disengaged from existing operations. The doctrine that said they had to withdraw to redeploy was wrong. Patton found a way to redeploy without withdrawing. 281 days of combat, 0 kilometers of retreat, and when faced with the largest German offensive since 1940, Third Army still didn't give back ground. The numbers proved what German commanders experienced as impossible persistence. Third Army operational records compiled by U.S. Army Historical Division in 1946 documented precise statistics for the entire operational period from August 1st, 1944 to May 8th, 1945. Total days operational, 281 days. Total distance advanced, 998 kilometers. Total distance retreated, 0 kilometers. Number of ordered withdrawals, 0 number of successful enemy counterattacks forcing withdrawal, 0 more significantly. The casualty ratios validated the doctrine's effectiveness rather than its recklessness. Third Army suffered 136,865 total casualties, while inflicting 1,443,888 enemy casualties and capturing 956,000 prisoners. The casualty exchange ratio was 10.6 to 1 in Third Army's favor. First Army, operating with similar force sizes and against comparable opposition, but following conventional flexible defense doctrine, achieved casualty exchange ratio of 5.2 to 1. Third Army's inflexible doctrine produced twice the effectiveness. The territorial control statistics were even more dramatic. Third Army liberated 81,522 square miles of territory. First Army, 37,148 square miles. The difference wasn't force size or equipment, it was operational doctrine. General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel provided the most comprehensive German assessment in his 1946 debriefing. His testimony was specific. Fighting Third Army required abandoning elastic defense doctrine. When we counterattacked, they didn't withdraw. When we prepared secondary defensive positions, they attacked before we completed preparations. The no-retreat policy created operational tempo we couldn't match. Our doctrine required enemy cooperation. They had to accept temporary withdrawals for our elastic defense to function. Third Army refused to cooperate. Von Manteuffel continued. Most critically, their soldiers knew they would never be ordered to surrender ground. This created defensive determination that made every position a fortress. We calculated breakthrough points based on expected American withdrawal when pressure exceeded certain thresholds. Those calculations were wrong. Third Army had no withdrawal threshold. The long-term impact reshaped American military doctrine. Post-war tactical manuals incorporated specific guidance on maintaining forward pressure with explicit references to Third Army operations as model examples. The principle that holding ground was cheaper than retaking ground became fundamental to U.S. Army operational planning, philosophy, and legacy. 231 words. The lesson transcends military tactics. Inflexibility in execution enables flexibility in strategy. German doctrine prioritized tactical flexibility, withdrawing when necessary, trading space for time, maintaining elastic defense. This flexibility was logical, proven, sophisticated. It had won battles for 3 years, but tactical flexibility created operational predictability. German planners could calculate American response times because flexible doctrine required certain steps. Withdraw, reorganize, counterattack. Those steps took time, predictable time. Patton's inflexibility eliminated those steps. No withdrawal meant no reorganization time. No reorganization time meant attacks continued without the pauses German planners exploited. The doctrine appeared rigid at tactical level, but created operational unpredictability at strategic level. The principle applies universally. Systems optimized for flexibility at one level become predictable at higher levels. Patton accepted tactical inflexibility, refusing to surrender ground regardless of local circumstances to achieve strategic surprise. German commanders couldn't predict Third Army's movements because the doctrine eliminated conventional response patterns. Von Manteuffel's final assessment captured the paradox. We fought Third Army with doctrine built on forcing enemy mistakes through pressure, but their doctrine contained no provision for withdrawal under pressure. Our doctrine assumed rational tactical flexibility. Their doctrine weaponized inflexibility. The 16 colonels Patton would have relieved for ordering withdrawals, except none ever did, understood the unspoken calculation. Moving backward once made moving backward acceptable. Third Army never moved backward because Patton never allowed the first exception. Inflexibility in principle enabled flexibility in practice. Forward was the only direction that mattered. 281 days proved it worked.